Hey everyone, welcome back to K-Korner, the channel where we dive into the wild world of entitled people and their unbelievable stories. Hope you enjoy it, and without further ado, let's go. I can't be the first to say this, but Reddit is by no means a place to accurately describe any type of relationship in full detail, especially a familial one. So those who said I don't like my father or don't approve of his lifestyle are jumping to conclusions. I love my father very much, and I'm grateful for everything he's done for me. But yeah, he's an asshole. We've had a rough relationship since I was a kid. It got much better after I moved out, mostly because we both realized we wouldn't have any relationship whatsoever if we didn't make efforts to change. As much as my father has become a better person, he still has some extremely narcissistic tendencies that make themselves obvious every now and then. The one that's the most relevant in this situation is the fact that he is terrible with boundaries. I came up with a metaphor in the comments on my previous post that I think illustrates this. He wants a door. I give him a window instead. He says he's fine with the window. Next thing I know, he's throwing rocks at the window until it's big enough to be a door. Not the best metaphor I've ever written, but I think it applies. And I want to add that one of the main reasons our relationship was so rocky when I was younger was because I had no means of restoring the window. Now that we don't live together and I pay my own bills, it's gotten easier to either stop him from throwing the rocks or not give him windows in the first place. On that note, my father is a pretty hands on grandfather. We only see him once a month, but he FaceTimes me frequently and the kids love him. So introducing new girlfriends as grandpa's friends, as many suggested, wouldn't work. We tried it once and they blew their cover in less than an hour. Also, it's not that I don't approve of my father's lifestyle. I simply don't care. I'm 33 years old. I have a job, a husband, and 2 children. My father's dating habits are neither my business nor my concern. He can date anyone he wants for as long as everyone is over 18 and not a complete monster. What I do care about is how this affects my children. I've been dealing with my father's revolving door since I was 10. Back then, his relationships tended to last at least 2 years, but it still took a toll on both me and my younger sister. The first woman my father dated after the divorce was insane and ruined my childhood. The next one was amazing, but didn't stick around for long. The following one was unpleasant. The list goes on. I don't want my children to go through this lack of stability. I'm carrying that baggage. They don't need to know how heavy it is. The last thing I want to add here is that my father has another major problem. He's obsessed with both pleasing everyone and the idea that I have to please everyone. That almost ruined our relationship completely when I was younger. And sadly, he hasn't really let go of that yet. The former is why he defended his 2022 girlfriend. I explained what happened on the repost I made, and the latter is the reason he was so pissed at me for banning his new girlfriend after the party fiasco. Okay, onto the Ackle update. My father and I had a minor fight over the phone about what happened at the party on Monday. 2 days later, his new girlfriend called me. She asked me why I'd banned her from my home before even meeting her or introducing my children. I told them to leave before the kids saw them. I asked her if she knew about my 12-month rule. Not only did she know, but she also insisted that my father break the rule anyway. She said she was great with kids and knew my children would love her, so she thought it wouldn't be a big deal for me to make an exception for her. I came very close to hanging up on her when she said that. The whole reason I even came to Reddit was because I thought I was being unfair to her, but this made it clear to me that she was also in the wrong. Instead, I decided to explain the 2022 incident. She didn't know about it. When I was done, she said she understood why the rule was created and apologized for trying to break it. I called my father the next day. I told him about the chat I'd had with his girlfriend, and he confirmed everything. He took her to the party because she wanted to go and he wanted to make her happy. We had a very long discussion that almost escalated into a fight. I reminded him of the reasons my rule existed. The only one he truly deemed valid was the 2022 incident, which he's still ashamed of. The discussion touched many other topics, but the main one was that my children are the priority. I told my father that my main concern is protecting them, and I won't hesitate to cut anyone off, including family, if it means doing so. In the end, he agreed to deal with the consequences. His new girlfriend will be allowed to meet my kids at the 12-month mark, but she won't be welcome at my place. But if he tries to pull this stunt again, they'll both be cut off. We ended the call on a cold note, but he called me again on Friday. He apologized for everything and said I was a great mother. I can tell when he's being sincere at this point, so I accepted the apology. Knowing my family, I don't think there will be any problems with this for a while. And if there are, I've got it covered. I think this will be my last post. Thank you all for the support and encouragement you've given me. So I'm a 19-year-old woman living with my parents and commuting to a college in the city. The college I'm in was one of my safe schools. And don't get me wrong, I like it and I'm super grateful for getting an education with the help of my parents, mostly my dad, but I'm a bit devastated about it. When I was a senior in high school, I wanted to go to college out of state and at least apply to a couple colleges my boyfriend would be going to as well. He didn't end up applying to many colleges in the area due to his mom not supporting them, and was forced to go to North Carolina when he got accepted to a college there since his parents were hoping to move out to NC due to rent being rough where they lived and they have some family there. I confronted my dad if I was able to apply out of state and go to college with my boyfriend, especially the one he was sure to be forced to go to if accepted, but he completely denied it. He said how I'm not allowed to apply out of state nor anything too far away from home. It needed to be the ones really nearby our home, and he wanted me to live with them, as well as being worried that my BF and I might break up and something along the lines of being worried for me, which I understand. But it would have been nice, you know? In all honesty, I knew he would say that, but it really hurt me. I really wanted to go to a couple out-of-state colleges and especially be with my boyfriend. At that point, we were together for 3 years. Currently, we're going strong with 4 years, and he likes my boyfriend and his family very much. Not to mention, it stressed me out so much too because I was hoping to apply to colleges that were 7 hours away because I really liked them and low-key wanted to be away from my dad since he's very controlling, emotionally abusive and exhausting to be around due to the fact he's always lashing out to my family and doing the absolute most when he gets mad. Currently, I'm attending a 4-year institution near home while my boyfriend is at NSC. It's manageable and okay, but definitely not what I hoped for. I understand it's my dad who's paying for my education, and I'm grateful, especially being first gen. But it hurts me to see how I could have gone to the college my BF is in and be in the same major department, as well as having that typical college experience which is dorming and living on campus, you know. I've heard many say it's overrated and rough, but like it would have been fun to say, at least with my significant other around and being in the major I want. In the college I'm in, I'm struggling to get by switching my majors due to the impaction rate since I got into my alternate one, and it's been taking a toll on me mentally. My BF tells me how I would have easily gone into the college he's at with my grades at high school too, and how I would have been fine living on my own. Which I agree that I've been doing chores and errands for my family since I've been 10. But I guess that's normal in a Mexican household. I just wished I was able to go to a school I'd like, preferably with my BF, and knowing what I know now as a college student, I would have gone to a seat. First Gene is a tough man. I didn't know my options, and I just do what my dad tells me to do, because that's what I'm supposed to do. I feel like it's too late for me to go to CC as an upcoming sophomore this fall. Anyways, my dad in the past has told me he would consider letting me go to the college my BF is in once we have the chance to visit him and his family, if that's what I really want still, as well as seeing if I'm capable of being more responsible. I have my license now, and I've been helping my family with that. Maybe I have a chance, but he always switches up on me and never goes by his word. My Beth and I are planning on seeing each other in the summer by him visiting me first and then me coming back with him to NZ alongside my family to visit and possibly do the thing my dad has told me. But it just feels like false hope I kept. Maybe when I get the chance I'll ask him, but I'm expecting him to say no, knowing how controlling and overprotective he is. Thanks for reading all of this if you did. I kept yapping, but it felt nice to just let it all go. I was on my way home after a very long day working at the hospital. As much as I would have rather just kept driving, the gas light blazing away on my dash told me to stop being lazy and just fill the tank. After hopping off the highway, I head for the small station I frequently use. It only has 2 pumps, both sides, so 4 spots. Even though it has great prices, I rarely have to wait more than a car or two for an open spot. Other than the station, the road is pretty much empty nearby. The station was on my side of the road, so I turned on my right-hand directional. As I began to turn the wheel into the station, this lunatic in a Mercedes coming from the other direction sliced through the outlane and inches across my front bumper to beat me into the parking lot. I slammed on my brakes, sending my gym bag and a stack of folders shooting off the passenger seat into a jumbled mess on the floor. I'm not a big swearer, but that had me cussing like a sailor. As I pulled in, I noticed a police car in a parking spot outside the building that houses the cashier and the tiny convenience store. My hopes rose as I prayed the officer saw the crazy lady's stunt, and I was about to witness instant karma. No such luck. Sigh. She pulled to one side of the pumps. I pulled to the other. I got out, swiped my card, and started the gas flowing. Then, clear as a bell, I hear the snottiest-sounding voice issuing from the Mercedes. This is unbelievable. I was clearly here first, but this idiot is filling up the other car first. No, he hasn't even started me yet. I swear, these people are stupid as brick out here. Hold on, Shelley. I have to deal with this moron or I will be here all day. Now, the dreaded, excuse me, is aimed right at me. You know you don't need to wait for the tank to be full before you start another car. Now come here and take this, she said, waggling a credit card at me. If I am late because of you, I will be calling your boss. And just so you know, it is very rude to serve customers out of order. I was here ahead of that guy. I looked down and sure enough, she had a New Jersey license plate. NJ, you don't pump your own gas. An attendant does it for you. My state may have a few full service stations left, but honestly, I haven't seen one in ages. Here, you pump for yourself. If she had gotten out of her car, she would have seen I was that guy, but the pump blocked her line of sight. I considered an I don't work here lady-style response, but the primped-up entitled expression on this self-absorbed witch required more from me. She stared harder at me, raising her brows and waggled the card even more emphatically before I knew what to do. I let go of my pump, stepped closer, and took the card from her manicured fingers. As she sneered at me, I looked her right in the eyes and snapped my hand downward, flinging her card straight into the trash barrel beside the pump. Someone must have thrown a slushie or milkshake in there because the card made an awesome splat sound when it hit the bottom. The harpy, shrill screech that ensued made the thought of sorting out all the files on the floor of my car almost worth it. It could have stopped there and I would have happily driven away with my half-full tank, but it was not over yet. She was screaming obscenities at me as I turned away, broiling out the Mercedes and her designer outfit, completely losing her mind. That was when the officer came dashing out of the store. "Excuse me, miss? Are you all right?" "What is going on?" "This man assaulted me and stole my card." "He threw it in there," she says, stabbing a 3-inch-long nail at the barrel. "Is that correct, sir?" "Barely," she insisted. And I mean insisted. I took her card. Since I am under no obligation to provide her service with the card, nor did I want it, I disposed of it in the most expedient manner available to me. I replied, gesturing at the wonderful trash receptacle myself. That was a pretty petty thing to do. "I think you should get it for her," the officer decreed. Karen was beaming with smug malice at that. "I will, under one condition. You detain us both, then go look at the store's parking lot camera. Once you see how we entered the lot, you can decide who goes dumpster diving." He raised a brow at me, but said fine. He takes our licenses and tells us both to wait there. She is a bit perplexed at first, but her natural entitlement must have convinced her she has to be in the right. It is not long before she began to hiss a handful of pretty vile threats at me. I ignored her and finished filling my tank. My passive, smiling confidence must have unnerved her eventually. She crept back into the driver's seat and began talking about lawyers with Shelley. About 20 minutes later, the officer returned. He handed me back my license and told me I'm free to go. Before Karen can get a word out, he very sternly rounds on her and says, "Registration, ma'am." That made cleaning up her mess totally worth it. My aunt and her 3 children came from Texas to visit us for the weekend. I wasn't thrilled about their arrival because her oldest son, who is 19 now, used to pick on me when we were younger. It had been a decade since she last visited us. As they entered our house, my aunt walked in with her oldest son, a younger son, who is 12, and a younger daughter who is 8. I put on a forced smile and greeted them. I told the 2 youngest ones that they could go upstairs and play on my Xbox until dinner time. Then I joined my twin brother and mom, sitting down beside them. I'm passionate about video editing in Photoshop, so Final Cut Pro X is my preferred software. A few months ago, I upgraded to a 15-inch MacBook Pro because my 2013 eMac was no longer sufficient for my needs. While everyone was engaged in conversation and my brother and I were using our phones, as instructed by our mom to be present with the family, my aunt ventured upstairs to explore the house. Curiosity got the better of me, and I followed her, offering to show her around. When she entered my room, she noticed my MacBook and inquired about its owner. Here's how the conversation unfolded. Entitled Aunt, Krusty. Whose laptop is that? Me. Oh, that's mine. Entitled Aunt, can I hold it? Me. Sure. Entitled Aunt takes hold of it. Wow, Krusty, this feels nice. Can I keep it? Me. Absolutely not. Entitled Aunt, I'll pay you for it. It's probably worth around $500, right? Me. Actually, this is a $5,000 laptop. I worked hard to save up for it. I can't just give it away. Entitled Aunt, Krusty, I deserve it. I haven't seen you guys in 10 years, and you didn't even get me a gift? Me. Is that my fault? I don't think so. Entitled Aunt, well, since you won't give it to me, you shouldn't be allowed to use it either. To my shock, she proceeded to open the laptop and forcefully throw it onto the ground, then deliberately stepped on it with her high heels. If we had carpeted floors, the laptop might have been salvageable, but unfortunately we didn't, and her action sealed its fate. I immediately called my parents, who rushed to my aid. My mom asked why she did such a thing, to which she mumbled, because she wouldn't give it to me. As a consequence, my aunt and all her children were banned from our house. I turn 18 in less than a week, so I'll wait until I'm officially an adult to take legal action and sue her for the damages. Wish me luck. Edit. I intend to file a police report and, hopefully, pursue legal action. Clearly, she's struggling to take responsibility for her actions. Edit 2. A few months ago, I pressed charges and took her to court, and fortunately, I won the case. Now, she owes me a significant amount of money. Enjoying the stories yet? If you do, please subscribe, like, and comment. I had made up my mind. It was time to reveal to the world what had transpired with a relentless sociopath who had dared to cross paths with our tight-knit neighborhood. To set the stage, I resided in a sizable yet not overly expansive city known as Palmville. My home was situated near the corner of a bustling suburb, nestled between crowded apartment buildings, a river emitting a pungent diesel odor during low tide, and two busy highways. Being a minority in this neighborhood, I often faced prejudice and animosity due to my ethnicity. However, despite a few clashes between families resulting in physical altercations, enough of our neighbors accepted us, creating a sense of safety when venturing outside our abode. It was an arduous neighborhood, but it was our sanctuary, a place that fiercely protected its own. The community center held a significant role, akin to that of a temple, with Amy serving as the esteemed priestess. In our neighborhood, she commanded immense respect, exuding a calm, empathetic demeanor that mirrored her elevated status. I had never witnessed her deviate from a strong moral code. Now, let me introduce our former landlord, an Asian woman of short stature who embodied the stereotypical traits associated with her ethnicity. Kindness and sweetness radiated from her. Our house exceeded what my parents could afford, and she recognized this. She went above and beyond, helping tenants struggling financially by assigning them repair and maintenance jobs. She compensated them by deducting amounts from their rent, often exceeding the actual value of their work. In hindsight, such practices may have been legally questionable, but they are inconsequential to this story since her death, under suspicious circumstances, does not directly impact the events that follow. Her sons, who had no interest in real estate, assumed control of the business following her passing. Unable to decipher how she had managed to navigate the precarious financial landscape, with numerous accounts steeped in red ink, they decided to unload properties, including ours. I bear no ill will towards them, and genuinely wish them success. However, the individual who purchased our house, a sociopath, emerges as a key figure in today's tale. This man wasted no time in turning our lives into a living nightmare. His initial act of cruelty involved the sudden rent increase. Apparently, when the ownership transferred, he gained the authority to adjust the rent to match current market rates. We had been residing there for several years, paying below market prices from the beginning, so this unexpected blow dealt a severe blow to our finances. The second blow came when he declared that rent must be paid in full by the first day of each month. No partial payments, no negotiations for reductions, and no extensions granted. Failure to meet this strict deadline would result in an eviction notice by the second day. Our savings were rapidly depleting, but we managed to scrape by, albeit with great difficulty, for the time being. Meanwhile, Amy had tirelessly campaigned for the city to co-fund a revitalization project aimed at renovating the entire dilapidated suburb, and her efforts paid off. One street at a time, a procession of work trucks filled the neighborhood on a daily basis, addressing various issues like leaky pipes, sinkholes, fences, and rejuvenating paint. It was a remarkable transformation that captivated everyone's attention, including the sociopath. Since our house was located on the outskirts of the neighborhood, it was slated for renovation last, and the sociopath wanted us out so he could relist the property once the renovations were complete. Though he never explicitly stated his intentions, multiple conversations left no doubt, even for my 10-year-old self. He resorted to random inspections, exaggerating minor house problems, and even went as far as attempting to falsely accuse us of animal abuse because our cat had been attacked, most likely by a raccoon. Absurdly, he tried to claim that we had inflicted the injuries ourselves, as if a veterinarian couldn't differentiate between knife wounds and an animal mauling. We could see the writing on the wall and started making preparations to move. We decided to relocate and live with my eldest brother in a place I'll refer to as Banjolman. Most of us had already moved, except for my other brother who chose to stay behind due to his strong social connections in Palmville, and his new job provided just enough income to meet the sociopath's inflated bills if he cut corners. However, despite his best efforts, my brother came up $20 short one month, and the sociopath seized the opportunity. He gave us a 30-day notice. So, we made the 400-mile trip from Banjoland to Palmville to gather the remainder of our belongings. I couldn't say I approved of my brother's living conditions, but that's inconsequential to the story. The month passed without any major incidents, as if the sociopath believed he had already emerged victorious and had no need to waste fuel on gloating visits. Word had spread throughout the neighborhood about what was transpiring, and for the first time ever, upon my return, I encountered no confrontations, no hostile glares, no racist remarks. Everyone conducted themselves with a solemn demeanor, which, to be honest, felt somewhat eerie. I suppose those in lower income brackets were all too familiar with the looming threat of eviction and recognized that I was already going through a difficult time. 20 days later, the sociopath declared it was time for us to leave. Although we still had a week remaining, we lacked funds to mount a legal fight. Amy, like a guardian angel, intervened and managed to secure us a couple of extra days. Nevertheless, it was evident that the sociopath was determined to drive us out, perhaps because the work trucks were now just one street away from our house. The last glimpse I caught of the home I had grown up in was witnessing workers carelessly tossing my childhood possessions into a large bin, even though we technically had 3 more days before we had to vacate. What follows is a collection of information I acquired through grapevine conversations and phone calls with individuals present during the events. Without delay, the sociopath promptly moved into the house himself. Wondering why? Well, here's the answer. Those who own their homes were entitled to receive full cost coverage for renovations as determined by the city. The sociopath cunningly realized that by residing in the house, which he had purchased at a bargain during liquidation, he could have it renovated for free and subsequently flip it for a profit. However, Amy was not one to be trifled with. She made it abundantly clear to him that when the revival project was approved, the house had been classified as a rental property and the budget couldn't be altered now. Furthermore, she clarified that the partial cost coverage approved for the property was in our name, not his, rendering him ineligible for any financial compensation. He would have to foot the entire bill himself. Since the entire neighborhood was undergoing a transformation, he was required to renovate the exterior at the very least. Failure to comply would result in the house being condemned due to its unsightly appearance or deteriorating condition, whatever the appropriate legal term may be. In a bid to save money, he cut corners during the renovations, opting for new carpets and a fresh coat of paint, a decision that would later come back to haunt him. Undeterred, he proceeded to earnestly try to sell the house. However, the neighborhood hadn't forgotten his actions. Instances of vandalism occurred when the property was unoccupied, while neighboring residents made sure to create disruptive noise during house viewing. Additionally, whenever potential buyers sought opinions from the community, they were met with disdainful glares and unwelcoming responses. The neighborhood made it virtually impossible for him to sell the house at its market value. After enduring 3 months of these tactics, the sociopath reluctantly lowered the listing price. A month later, he made another reduction, finally attracting a potential buyer. Amy, taking matters into her own hands, made sure that every single piece of paperwork was meticulously filed before the property changed hands. Furthermore, the entire house underwent thorough inspections. And that's when karma itself caught up with him. Due to his rushed and shoddy renovations, the pipes had somehow sustained damage, resulting in the emergence of insidious black mold. Amy, bearing in mind his past treatment of us, decided to exact her revenge. I never learned the exact details of her scheme, but she managed to delay the sociopath's receipt of the news about the black mold discovery for several days. By the time he finally learned of the situation, there wasn't enough time left to arrange for cleaning or make any last-ditch efforts to salvage the house. Within days, the house was condemned. In a final act of retribution, Amy and members of the neighborhood filed numerous complaints and injunctions, compelling the city to order the sociopath to demolish the house immediately. He was forced to bear the cost out of his own pocket. He had attempted to ruin a family and had violated laws all for the sake of quick cash. Instead, he found himself entangled in a year-long legal battle and incurred significant financial losses. The neighborhood remembers. The neighborhood enforces justice. I first got to college my freshman year and met the dorm leader, RA, at most schools. Like most colleges, the dorm leader was the upperclassman that lived in the dorms and monitored the freshman halls. My dorm leader's name was Julio, fake name, and at first he seemed like a nice dude that minded his own business. He talked about how he would stay out of everyone's business if we would stay out of his. Also, he tried to be the cool dorm leader and always mentioned to me about how he drank tons of alcohol his freshman year in the dorm. He gave off the impression he really didn't care if we ever drank in our dorm rooms, but to just keep it on the low if we did. I really didn't drink much at all, but I appreciated the fact he seemed pretty normal and didn't try to rat on kids. During the last week of October of my freshman year of college, I had one of the hardest weeks of my academic career. I was a biochemistry major taking some pretty tough classes and had 3 exams that week. At the end of the week, a friend I had recently made down the hall invited me to his dorm room to watch an upcoming NBA game. As we were watching the game, he had a bottle of vodka and gave some to the guys in the dorm. Being a naive and stupid freshman kid just trying to make some friends, I took 1 shot of vodka and continued to watch the game. As we're watching the game, one of the guys in the dorm spills a bottle of soda and rushes to the bathroom to grab some paper towels. As he walked out of the dorm room, Julio walked by and noticed the bottle of vodka. He laughed and said something of the sort of "I remember when I was a freshman, haha, just try and keep it down." We thanked him and told him to have a good night. It seemed like a normal conversation and nothing out of the ordinary. 30 minutes later, we heard a knock on the door and 2 policemen showed up with breathalyzers. They told us they had received a complaint from Julio about underage drinking and a party being thrown in the dorm room. Remember, it was 3 guys watching a Lakers game on a Thursday night at 8 p.m. I ended up getting a minor in consumption charge for blowing A2, had to do 20 hours community service, a reflection journal, and appeared to the Judicial Affairs Center at my college about my supposed drinking problem. I'm not blaming the officer for giving me a ticket, but I was pretty upset that Julio, who always talked about getting drunk during his freshman year in the dorm. A few weeks later, I saw Julio in Straight Up, asked him why he decided to rat me out. Specifically, I asked why he didn't just tell me to head back to my dorm if he had a problem with the alcohol, instead of calling the police right after our conversation. He responds word for word with "you made a decision and had to suffer the consequences of that decision." After that incident, I never really talked to him, but he always tried to be buddy-buddy when he saw me in the hallway. Anyway, I eventually left the dorms and moved off campus for my sophomore year. I decided to rush a fraternity my freshman year and ended up meeting some really nice guys. I've never been the fraternity type, but I went to a smaller college where fraternities are a lot different than most places. During the second semester of my sophomore year, my fraternity was taking a new pledge class. One day, I received a text from Julio saying, "One of the guys pledging your fraternity has been caught dealing alcohol to another freshman in the dorms. I thought I would let you know." Turns out Julio was the dorm leader for a freshman pledging my fraternity and ratted him out to judicial affairs as well. Thinking the term dealing alcohol was the lamest, funniest thing I've ever heard, I sent that to our fraternity group me and everyone laughed about it. About a week later, that kid pledging our fraternity came up to me asking about the message I received from Julio. Essentially, a pretty similar thing happened to him like what happened to me. Julio found out he had given another kid in the dorm a bottle of wine and reported it to the police. This kid ended up getting a minor in possession and had to speak with judicial affairs. This is where the story gets hilarious. In his meeting with judicial affairs, the kid pledging our fraternity told them that his dorm leader, Julio, was now a senior at this point, had texted me about the charges pending against him. Apparently, it's a huge violation to discuss pending charges against a freshman in your dorm to a third party. The judicial affairs guy told him that if he could prove Julio was discussing this charge with a third party, aka me, he would receive severe sanction. Basically, if I sent that text to the judicial affairs people, Julio would be in big trouble, so ended up sending them that text that night. After that, I didn't hear anything about what happened to Julio and had honestly forgotten about it. However, nearing the end of the school year in my sophomore year, I saw Julio at the dining hall and came up to speak to me. He tells me a story about how he knows I was the one who ratted him to judicial affairs, how he ended up getting fired from his dorm leader position, lost the scholarship money his dorm leader job provided him, and overall how bad his life has been since he got fired. After going through his entire sob story, he asked me, "Why did you do that?" This could have been handled completely differently. I didn't have to get fired, and I could have kept my scholarship money. I looked him dead in the eye for what seemed like 30 seconds and said, "Julio, you made a decision and had to suffer the consequences of that decision." Let's go back a few years. I was a combat engineer platoon sergeant. We had recently gotten a new company commander who thought crap didn't stink. My first interaction with him was when I got back from running a Mi-140B range, where I was told he wanted to speak to all leadership immediately in the conference room. Well, it took 3 years for him to arrive, despite once calling many times he insisted we stay. The entire meeting was him bragging about himself, saying that he was trying to get the company slotted for a deployment to the Middle East, as well as how excited he was to go. I spoke up. He basically said he's a jerk, but with more words which ended the meeting, which got me a stern talking to and thinly veiled threats. This captain had been in for 15 years, never once been deployed. That takes effort, a lot of figurative sucking up. He only wanted to go now because he was up for major. It turned out the brigade had a mission, asked for volunteers. Captain Jerk volunteered me to go, despite knowing I'd gotten married a week earlier. I made it very clear I did not want to go to the higher-ups. I was told it was between myself and the captain. Well, a month out, my sister-in-law passed away. Well, Captain Jerk didn't care, gave me no leave, and I was still to leave about a week after the funeral. Screw him. I walked in to talk to the command sergeant major who would immediately drop from the deployment. But the captain was always sucking up to the battalion commander, so nothing happened to him. About 8 months later, Captain Jerk got his wish. Headquarters platoon, one other, was slotted to deploy. Of course, because I had the most combat experience, most deployments in the platoon, he naturally decided that's why my platoon should go. Now, in order to deploy, you first have to go to a month-long field exercise where you are graded on performance. This generally applies to the higher levels of leadership. By this time, I was just angry. So I got my squad leaders together, improvised a few missions. First, everyone was to follow the keep's instructions as literally as possible, no matter how dumb, and not to give any advice. This led us to getting absolutely destroyed in training, which was glorious. Secondly, most importantly, was the psychological aspect. So, this jerk commander would go to bed nightly at 9, 0 p.m. no matter what. In the deserts of California, you can find all sorts of creepy crawlies to slip in a sleeping bag while sprinkling juice on his uniform. They'd also periodically hide some of his gear or render his rifle inoperable. So for days this went on. Poor guy slept very little because I ensured his tent was set over top of a beehive. These bees hated any vibration. They loved juice. The jerk never realized why he was constantly getting stung. As we were to be falling under a new brigade, I had to go meet the higher-ups who, wouldn't you know it, the coal we were set to fall under turned out to have been my first company commander, who I got along great with. I pulled him aside and called up my squad leaders, where we basically told him Captain Jerk was going to get someone killed, pointed out his erratic behavior, the overall poor performance. Needless to say, he was quickly relieved of command career killer and sent back to work in an office where he belonged. As for myself and my platoon, I still didn't want to go, but the new company commander was my old platoon leader for my second deployment, plus I couldn't let my guys go without me. Turned out it would be my last deployment as some injuries forced me out of the military, but everyone came back alive. Edit. I sent a text to one of the old squad leaders because for the life of me I couldn't remember exactly what the deal was with the captain. He had been an effort prior to becoming an officer. Clearly I didn't care enough to retain that information. Thanks for joining us. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more captivating stories. Share your own experiences, opinions in the comments below, and let's keep the conversation going. Until next time, stay tuned for more epic tales.